Yeah, we're very close to spring break. You're all excited about that, I know. Yeah. All right. So let's pick up where we left off, talking about our good buddy Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt, using his second term and having a great win for his full term as president, is going to do what many presidents do once they think that they have what's called a mandate. A lot of people giving them support, giving him that support, winning that huge electoral and popular vote majority, to try to get things done that he personally believes in. And he is really big on conservation. So he is going to turn his attention to setting aside things that are valuable resources but are something that can't be replaced. First thing he's going to do is the Reclamation Act of 1902. And this is going to actually establish dams, hydroelectric dams, and provide areas for irrigation for our more arid areas of the United States. And he's going to establish the federal forest reserves, in which he cuts off 150 million acres of western land to be set aside and businesses prevented from going in and harvesting the resources. And to protect the federal forest reserve, the National Conservation Commission is created, and the National Conservation Commission is headed by Gifford Pinchot. We'll talk about him a little bit more in a minute. Okay, Gifford Pinchot. Now, this is one of my favorite pictures of Theodore Roosevelt. You might, it's him sitting on in the Rockies, sitting on a top of a mountain overlooking two different mountain ranges there. And this is probably one of the most famous drawings of Theodore Roosevelt. During his second administration, he went camping with a group of his friends out in Alabama, and they wanted to hunting. And he let it be known that, hey, I've always wanted to hunt a bear. I've always wanted to shoot a bear. Never shot a bear. And I'd love to go and hunt a bear. So, unbeknownst to him, his friends are going to put a bear trap out, and that is successful, and it catches a bear cub. They're going to tie a rope around his neck and then tie it to a tree. The next morning, Theodore Roosevelt, when he wakens, comes out, and his friends are like, hey, come with us, grab your gun. Come with us. Like, what are we going after? Found you a bear. You're like, oh, bear, let's go. So they go and they present this bear to him. And it's a little bear cub that's tied to a tree. He is furious. Furious that his friends would do this without thinking he'd be so low as to shoot a senseless animal. And he refuses to shoot it. Well, a newspaper picks up this story, and somebody draws a picture of Theodore Roosevelt refusing to shoot this little bear cub. A stuffed animal company in, I want to say it's New Jersey, is going to say, hey, this is a great idea for a new stuffed animal, and they create teddy bear. Theodore Roosevelt, a shortened version of Theodore is Teddy Roosevelt, and they create the teddy. If you have a teddy bear, ever had a teddy bear, it can trace its creation to this event. Now, during this post-war era, we are going to see quite a bit of change in industrial creation, a lot of innovation. And in 1879, a German inventor by the name of Carl Benz is going to take a gas-powered engine and couple it on a carriage. First automobile would be created. For the next 20-some-odd years, cars are really are really just a novelty. They're not anything that is seen as being useful. They're something, oh look, that's kind of neat. But they're too expensive, they don't have any range, and there's not really much use for them. All that is going to change in the early 1900s when Henry Ford takes the latest advancements in manufacturing, the assembly line, and applies it to the creation of his car, the Model T. Now, people are going to be able to afford a Model T for as little as $850. Still a lot of money back then, but substantially cheaper than what what they had beforehand. In 1914, the self-starter is going to be introduced on the Model T, which means that you don't have to crank it. If you've ever seen old TV shows, my kids and I were watching one of my favorite shows of all time, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and which he has to start the car by cranking it. And the problem was, this time period, women were not strong enough to crank that car, so they could not go places without a man because they could not start it unless they actually started. So the self-starter changed all that. It was 1914. Now, so we have the Model T car. Henry Ford said he had no problem painting it whatever color his customers wanted as long as it was black. He had no problem as long as it was black. Any color you wanted as long as it was black. On December 17, 1903, at Kitcock, North Carolina, Orville and Wilbur Wright are going to successfully complete the first powered flight by a man-made object. Now, much like the car when it was first introduced, it is going to be a novelty. Really no reason. It's just kind of neat to see. World War I is going to change that, and when it starts being considered for military use. Have any of you guys been to the Smithsonian and actually seen it there in space? Yeah. It's neat to see how it occurs. Now, in 1907, we are going to have another economic panic. This happens about every 15 years, and that's just normal. That's just the way things go. There's no control on our economy to prevent it from happening. There are a lot of reasons that this occurs. There's too much gold in the market after the Klondike gold rush. The Russo-Japanese War had caused a lot of demand for our inventions, our supplies, and then once the war had ended, so did that demand. Every time we come back from a war, or a war ends, a major war ends, the United States has a tendency to not recalibrate to a peace setting, and it is going to cause problems. Major issue in 1906 is in San Francisco, a massive earthquake destroys the city, resulting in about today's value, about $5.5 billion for its damage. Couple this with economic malaise in Europe, you're going to see a lot of the capital invested into our economy by Europeans pulled back over to Europe. As a result, we're going to enter into this panic. Now, blame is going to be placed on Roosevelt during this time because it is seen as partly his fault because of the business climate he's established with his trust busting. He's so big on trust busting. People don't know if what they are actually doing is going to be acceptable, and if you have a threat of a lawsuit coming, why would you even bother with it? It's just something that shouldn't even, probably many people wouldn't want to mess with. Another issue that is placed on another issue that is going to be problematic is many business interests look at Theodore Roosevelt as siding too much with the labor union and not enough people, and that causes people to blame him as well. Now, Roosevelt is going to act rather quickly to try to get this panic ended. He is going to arrange for millions of dollars to be dumped into the New York banks so that they can stay afloat, not collapse. And Congress is going to pass the Aldrich Act, 1908. For a short-term issue, national banks are allowed to issue their own currency to cover up for any lacking of gold or silver in their vault. And to make sure things like this do not happen in the future, Congress is going to call for a National Monetary Commission to study banking and currency problem and then make a recommendation on how to fix it. The results of this information, these findings, would be used to create the Federal Reserve in 1913. Now, Theodore Roosevelt, coming to the end of his second term, first elected term, decides that he wants to go out on with a bang. And to do this, he is going to order United States 16 ships, 4 squadrons of the United States Navy to sail around the world. This is something that has never been done before in this large of a number of ships. The Panama Canal is not open yet, so it does involve quite a bit of danger going through the Straits of Magellan. They're going to leave on December 16th, 1907. They're going to return roughly 9 days before Theodore Roosevelt's term as president expires, February 22nd, 1909. During this time, they're going to make 20 ports of call. Now, the places they go are rather interesting. One of their first stops is Japan, known as the Great White Fleet because during peacetime, what do? You paint your ships white. Only in wartime are they painted gray. So, why do we go to Japan? What has just happened in the last 15 years for Japan? They defeated Russia in the Russo-Japanese War, and they defeated China in the Sino-Chinese. They're feeling their oats. As a result, when we sail over there, we're like, hey, how are you doing? How you doing? Good to see you. Glad to see you. But hey, look at the size of our guns. A fully modernized fleet sails around the globe, 40,000 miles. When they make their port of call in Japan, the Japanese, to show how much they support the United States, desire peace with the United States, they have all their children lining the docks, waving American flags. Woo, we like you, America. Do they really? No, but Theodore Roosevelt being Theodore Roosevelt, when he had first approached Congress and said, I'm going to do this, they said, no, that's a waste of resources. He says, okay, no, I'm not going to let you. He says, okay. So he comes back a little bit later and says, hey, I've just dispatched the Great White Fleet across the ocean. So we told you not to do it. He said, yes, I know. I did it anyway. I said, well, that wasn't a good move. He said, well, yeah. See, the problem, though, is that you cannot sail around the world without being refueled. Okay? You do it today with nuclear vessels, but you cannot do it with coal-powered ships. So you have to stop places to get. As a result, halfway through their voyage, they run out of fuel. So they telegraph. Theodore Roosevelt says, we need more fuel. Theodore Roosevelt goes. Congress says, the Great White Fleet is in India. They're out of fuel. We need more fuel. Congress says, no, we told you not to. No, we told you not to. Theodore Roosevelt says, okay, what should I tell the press? Congress refuses to bring Great White Fleet home. Congress says, all right, we'll pay. Okay. When the Great White Fleet returns to Hampton Yards on the Chesapeake, Theodore Roosevelt is going to be there welcoming them back. To the officers and the men, he would later say, other nations may do what you have done, but they will have to follow you. This is going to be a great morale boost and really an increase in the prestige of the United States in how we are considered by our European neighbors. It's talk about in the Japanese War, the Russians couldn't send their fleet around Africa and send all as one group. We were able to send 16 ships around the world, and all of them arrive at the same place at the same time. And all so a lot of planning, they were able to do it. Thank you for using that word. I was going to say that too, but that's the correct word. Yes. Yeah. Look who we are. Look who we are. So in 1908, Theodore Roosevelt, as it kind of intimated, does not run for another term. That two-term tradition. He only was elected to one, but McKinley's term, he served the majority of it. He says, "I'm not going to run. I'm going to recommend, though, that my Secretary of War, William Howard Taft, be the Republican nominee." And he gets the nomination. The Democrats, for the last time, are going to nominate William Jennings Bryan. He's old by now. William Jennings Bryan is defeated by Taft, but not as big of numbers as Theodore Roosevelt won in 1904. Taft, if you've ever heard any stories about the president, you've probably heard a story about him. By the time that he is president, the White House is 110 years old. It was made of wood. The area that is Washington, D.C. was a swamp, and it was drained. That does not mean that it's a dry area, but the conditions that made it a swamp are still that way. And as a result, there's a lot of humidity, no air conditioning. What does that do? Have you ever seen, what happens to a house that is not maintained? And the air conditioning, especially in Texas, and not maintained, and the air conditioning is not on for a month to 3 days. It's nasty, and it rots. It rots very quickly. So the White House is old. It's rotting. One day, William Howard Taft is walking on the second floor, and he goes over a rotten section and falls through. He was 300 pounds. And so, quote, lands like this, legs below, torso up, and like, oh! During the next administration, Wilson's administration, they would completely build the White House. They would gut it. Basically, the outside is the same, and it's all steel construction inside. And then he got stuck in the bathtub. Yes, he's also the president. Got stuck in the bathtub. Huh? Now, part of the Republican platform in the 1908 election was to lower the tariff, lower the rates on the tariff. And to fulfill that plank of the Republican platform, now that Taft is elected, Congress would pass the Payne-Aldrich tariff, which rates lowered rates on 650 items, but it also raised rates on 200 items after being amended heavily. As a result, even though it was designed as a low tariff, it actually ended up, on average, higher than the previous tariff. So that doesn't bode well for the Republicans. Then, in 1909, we have a problem with the Conservation Commission. Gifford Pinchot is still the commissioner for the National Forest, but the new Secretary of the Interior, a man by the name of Richard Ballinger, is going to allow private companies to build hydroelectric dams in the Federal Reserve. Now, Federal Reserves are land that is set aside for what? What? What are you going to do? You're not going to do anything with them, right? And now he's saying we're going to allow dams to be built in these areas. Now, Pinchot does not like this. And he and Ballinger start fighting. No, not physically fighting, just sniping at each other, having arguments. And Pinchot is going to eventually write a letter that is going to be read on the floor of the Senate, very critical of President Taft and Richard Ballinger. Ballinger, as a result, is going to fire Pinchot from this position. Now, just because he's fired does not mean Pinchot is going to discontinue his action. And what he is going to do is start writing a lot of letters about what is going on with the current administration's lack of conservation to his best friend. Best friend can't get the letters right now because he's busy, but he's writing a lot of these letters. That's all you need to know. I might tell you who's best friend. Guess who's best friend? Best friend is Theodore Roosevelt. And Roosevelt's not around. Now, another thing that has happened is as our investments in Latin America continue to increase, this whole brutal idea of Latin American nations, if you don't do what we say, we are going to send the Marines in, force you to do what we want you to, is not going to cut it. Okay? If I were to bring Marines in here and they're going to point their rifles at you and say, you are going to do as we say, are you going to do it willingly? Huh? Willingly? Okay, I'm compelling you to do it, okay? Taft realizes that there's a better way to do it. He says, we're going to substitute dollars for bullets. Or substitute bullets for dollars. What we're going to do is, hey, you're doing things I like. This is my big old wad, $100 bill. It's $1,000. You're doing things that I like. What are you going to do? All right. Hey. Oh, hey, you're doing great. Here's $2,000. Now, are you going to do what I like? Are you going to do what I like? What about you? You're not going to do what I like? They got money. What are you going to do? That's right. Hey, look, I'm back. $2,000. Fun. All right? So it works more effectively. However, that's going to, kind of affect our foreign policy, because now our foreign policy is kind of what? Kind of tinged green. More economic policy than it is foreign policy. We're more interested in forcing you to do what we want, because do what we want makes us happy, which makes us make money, and then you can have. And it may not be in your best interest. So, let's talk about poor Theodore Roosevelt. I don't think I have anybody to support. Now, I went to my wife's 25th high school reunion this past summer. Very interesting. Very interesting. I see a lot of people who had really nice hair who are really bald. You see a lot of people who were like, hey, how are you doing? So, Mr. Swole, Mr. Fat now. All the fat. there's always that guy. There's always that guy. Hey, man, do you remember that year we went to the championships in the football game? Yeah, I do. Yeah, I remember that. That was awesome, dude. That was great. That was the best day of my life. Woohoo! And I'm like, oh, seriously? 25 years ago, you caught a touchdown pass. Okay? There are certain people, you'll see this when those of you that graduate from high school already, whose lives peak at 16 and 17 years of age. It's all downhill from there. I'm not joking. But but it's true. Okay? Here is Theodore Roosevelt, youngest person ever to be president of the United States. Serves 4 years, serves another 4 years, and retires. And he just turned 50. Just turned 50. Most powerful man in the world. Do what? Nothing. So he decides, I'm going to get away from all this. Don't want to be involved with any of this stuff. I am gone. I'm going to go on an African safari. So he goes to Africa. I love Theodore Roosevelt's idea of conservation, because today it would freak us out. His idea of conservation is going to Africa and shooting everything that moves so that he can ship it to the Smithsonian so people who can't go to Africa can see what it looks like. All right? Here he is. I'm going to say this, and you guys are going to be like, ah. Here is a picture of him in Africa, on the Sahara, after he has shot a rare white rhino. Okay? You're like, he did what? Yeah, because that's Theodore Roosevelt. So what? Okay. When he's on this excursion, he is going to send, where is it at? He is going to send, he collects 3,000 trophies. Okay, he shoots 3,000 bees. He killed 9 lions, 5 elephants, and 13 rhinos. Okay? So he comes back, and he decides, that was fun, now let's go to the Amazon. When he's in the Amazon, he goes with his son, Theodore Roosevelt Jr., and he develops blood poisoning. He almost died. Teddy Jr. has to take his dad out of the Amazon on a stretcher. Hundreds of miles through the Amazon on a stretcher. Dad almost dies. So he gets back to his home, and he's recovered. Now, if you're recovering, you're exceptionally weak, can't move around, what have you, what can you have a lot of time to do? Have a lot of time to read. And he's got this huge pile of letters from different pen shops saying, Taft is screwing over your legacy. Everything that you wanted him to do, he did not do. Now, it's hard for Taft, because Taft is succeeding a very popular president, and it's very difficult to do that. George Herbert Walker Bush had to do that with Ronald Reagan. Okay? It's hard to be a great president in the shadow of a fantastic president. Okay? It's very difficult. So Taft, and didn't help it that his wife is like, why are you not as good as Roosevelt? Why are you not as good as Roosevelt? Roosevelt did this, Roosevelt did this. Okay, so what happens is when he gets his health back, he decides that he's going to do something about it. When he returns to full health, it's time for the election of 1912. In this election, the Republican Party is split, and basically it comes down to 2 men. This is an old adage, if you think about it long. what is it?
Roosevelt.
Yeah, it's Roosevelt and Taft.
Yeah, he's charging after.
Okay, so what is that? It's an old saying. What happens when an irresistible force, Theodore Roosevelt, meets an immovable object? What's going to happen? What should happen?
It's going to bounce off that back.
But he's irresistible. Can't resist him. Versus one of those things you don't know. Something's going to happen. What's going to happen? Well, we do know. The Republican Party is split. The Republican Party has split while Theodore Roosevelt is gone. Theodore Roosevelt is going to enter into the primaries in 12 states. Of those 12 states, he's going to win the primaries in 9, which means he gets all of their delegates for the Republican Convention. At the Republican Convention, a splinter group of the Republican Party has formed, known as the National Progressive Republican League. It is led by a man named Robert La Follette. Basically what happens is the National Progressive Republican League is going to be what Theodore Roosevelt stood for. The Republican Party is going to support Taft. At the convention, the Taft men who run the convention refuse to allow Theodore Roosevelt's men to be seated, which means because they know how they're going to vote. They do not want them to be seated. So what happens is Theodore Roosevelt and his men leave. Without any opposition, the Republicans are going to renominate Taft. The Democrat Party is going to nominate a man by the name of Woodrow Wilson. We'll talk about him a little bit later. Now, Robert La Follette is going to become ill in 1912 and not be able to continue on running the National Progressive Republican League. As a result, Theodore Roosevelt is going to take it over. In a press conference in which he is asked, how do you feel? Are you up for running for another term as president? He says, I feel as strong as a bull moose. I feel great. Hence, the name of the party is going to be changed from the National Progressive Republican League to the Bull Moose Party. Basically, it's a cult of personality for Theodore Roosevelt. In the campaign, Theodore Roosevelt is going to be giving a speech in Chicago when a man by the name of, Milwaukee, a man by the name of John Shink is going to shoot him in the chest. He gets shot, it goes through his steel eyeglass case, and it goes through his speech. Now, any ordinary man would be like, I've been shot, take me to the hospital. Theodore Roosevelt hasn't given his campaign speech yet. So he walks up to the stage and says, ladies and gentlemen, my remarks tonight will be brief as I have just been shot. He then proceeds to speak for 80 minutes.
Oh my God.
Because it's basically embedded in the chest.
Oh,
Okay, so it was not like, you put this is like Theodore Roosevelt.
Oh,
Okay? You have to understand, Theodore Roosevelt, because he shot right. Theodore Roosevelt later in life is going to grow a beard and is going to take up karate and be known as Chuck Norris. Okay? See, he doesn't die, he just changes persona. Right? He is their era version of Chuck Norris. Okay? So, in this election, as you can imagine, the Republican Party is split. Therefore, their votes are split. Taft comes in third. Theodore Roosevelt comes in second. Taft is the red to kind of pinkish. This is a county breakdown. This is how each county voted. Woodrow Wilson is blue. Roosevelt is green. And Eugene Debs runs as well and gets a yellow, the white to kind of yellow So even though, this happens all the time, even though you have three-party candidates running, the Republican Party basically split itself, and Woodrow Wilson is going to win the presidency with roughly about 39% of the popular vote, but enough in the electoral vote to win. Theodore Roosevelt is going to remove himself pretty much. It's going to be the last time he runs. He's not going to run for president. Woodrow Wilson is going to campaign on this new concept. It's going to be, you're going to see the birth of this concept of having kind of a thing that you run for to make changes to the government. And that is going to be New Freedom. His platform is the New Freedom. Now, of all the presidents that we have ever elected, this is the first, only one, who actually have a PhD. He has a PhD in political science, in which he had written numerous books on the presidency. He had been president of Princeton University, and he had been elected governor of New Jersey in 1910. You would think, with that list of qualifications, he would be a fantastic president. The problem is, that is all book learning. Book learning does not convey itself to politics. When it comes to politics, he's woefully outmatched. He thinks just because he says something should happen, it should happen. I don't want you to draw any correlations in modern day figures. That may just be in your own mindset. We do know that he was obsessive compulsive. He was OCD, and everything that he got his anytime that he got into an organization, he had to rewrite it to be in his best interest. That's how he was. In college, he did it in all his club organizations that he did, and he rewrote the New Jersey Constitution. It's just who he was. We'll see that come about when we get to the end of World War I. They can't understand why anybody would oppose him. He was also very sickly. He did not have a father in his life. I think his father died very early, and his mom and his sisters took care of him. And whenever he came down with a little bit of a sniffle, mommy and sister sent on him to put him to bed. So he was kind of a wimp, girly. Girly mom. To quote Arnold, it is a girly mom. So he was sickly, but it's self-imposed. You ever seen one of them? Back when, a long time ago, I remember seeing this happen all the time. There's a certain type of person that was in my church group back when she was diapers. There was this girl that was running and she fell down. She hit her elbow. Like, oh! She goes over her elbow, and this other girl goes running over her and says, oh no, she's hurt! She hurt her knee! And she's going, oh! Oh! And I'm like, whatever. I'm like, get up, go play. Baseball, rub some dirt off. Actually, I had a boy do that one time, baseball. Put the dirt on.
Thank you.
So, in 1913, Congress passes, let me rephrase. Okay, no, I can say it that way. In 1913, Congress passes the Underwood-Simmons Tariff Act because that same year, the United States ratified the 16th Amendment to the Constitution. The 16th Amendment to the Constitution says that your income can be directly taxed. Your personal income can be directly taxed. Remember, we tried this twice before, and the Supreme Court has overturned it because they said it's not in the Constitution that you can tax someone's income. In order to tax someone's income, it must be in the Constitution. It's not. So Congress says, okay, we're going to make it into the Constitution, and it becomes the 16th Amendment, and that says we're going to tax your income. So the tariff is going to be lowered from 40% to 25%. Why? Because now they've got all this new money coming in. They're not going to need that. So 15% gets cut. And to make this palatable for the American citizen, Congress says, now listen, it's only going to be a 1% tax increase, 1% tax on income that is $3,000 or more. Only 1%. If you make under $3,000, which is probably about 98% of Americans, it is 1%. Then 6% on income over $50,000. Somebody was laughing at $3,000. I came across my dad's contract that he signed in 1971. And in 1971, his job had an annual salary of $5,700 for a college professor. $5,700. When my mom bought me my first car, she looked at me, and as she signed it, she said, "I want you to know this car costs more than this. I'm paying more for this car than we are paying for our house. Pay for our house." Okay, that's what we're talking about money this time. A house is about $1,000. In 1913. So we're not talking a lot. And they said, guess what? This is never going to go up. There would never be a reason for us to raise these rates because we're bringing in so much money. All right? What is it today? 33%, I believe. What is 38% is the top rate? And that's for that's for the United States tax rate, not for any states that have tax rates, like New York. New York has like a 15 or 20% tax rate, so people who are making money, they're paying about 50% of their income taxes. I'm sure it's probably, which is why you're seeing people move out of those states and go to other places. Fortunately, all of them from Texas. I heard 1,000 people a day are moving to Texas. That's scary. They're all crazy. They are. Where are they coming from? They're coming from California.
I came.
Are you crazy? Are you crazy?
Oh, I go, are you crazy?
I don't know. I don't know you well enough.
I don't think I'm
Think you're crazy?
My mom's from California. Getting called out.
I'm getting people participating. I told you on the first day, if I offend you, I'm glad. Because that means you have deep self-belief. All right, so in 1913, remember the Aldrich Commission, the Aldrich Act had created the National Monetary Commission that said, we're going to see what the problems are and recommend the change. They do so. And those changes are going to be presented in bill form and passed and become, the bill is going to be the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, and it is going to be create the Federal Reserve System. Federal Reserve is a separate banking system for our banks that are independent of the federal government. The president cannot go say, hey, go do this. Okay? He cannot tell him to do that. He can recommend it, but he can't make him do it. The Federal Reserve System is made up of 12 different districts. Ours is 11. And they issue Federal Reserve notes. Now, originally they issued silver certificates. These silver certificates were, you were able to go into a bank and say, I want X amount of money. I want, here's a $20 bill. Okay. Glad the job for you. And college students are like, ooh, a month worth of ramen. Is that am I wrong?
No. It's
Pretty spot on?
Yeah.
Okay. I know when I was in college, you could get 10 or a dollar. So you get like this huge packs.
I know, you get a lot for $40.
Okay. Well, wrong. Breakfast chances. So, so what you have is you'd walk into a bank and present that silver certificate, and they would give you $20 worth of silver. Okay. Now, as you can see, silver dollars were equal to 77 ounces of silver at the time. What we have today is a Federal Reserve note. What we'll talk about over the course of the remaining portions of the semester is how we're going to go away from a gold standard to a silver standard to a gold standard into nothing. Today, you walk into a bank and say, give me $20 worth of silver, they're going to laugh. Whatever. Because our money is not tied to any form of anything valuable. Now it's just whatever the federal government says it's worth. And that's dangerous. There's movement to go back to the gold standard, and the only people that laugh at it are the politicians, because they realize that if money is actually worth something, they're not going to have money to go and spend on frivolous items. Stupid. Now, the 17th Amendment is going to be also ratified in 1913, and this provides for the direct election of senators. You will remember from 1301, when the Constitution was originally written, you had this problem about how Congress was made up. Should it be unicameral? Should it be bicameral? What is it? And how should they be chosen? Well, the Connecticut Compromise, which became our Constitution, said this: the House of Representatives shall be based on population of the state, and each state shall choose their representative. We choose our representatives from our district who then go and represent us in Congress. They speak for the people of the state. Now, the second portion of that is that the state legislatures would choose the state senators. And those senators would then represent the interests of the state in Congress. All right, now this is going to be changed in 1913 as part of the progressive era to give power to the people so that they would have a say in choosing their senators. Now, if there was one thing I would like to change about the Constitution, it would be this: amendment. Get rid of it. Because what is one of the defining issues about the Constitution and its relationship to the different branches? What's that called? What? Separation of powers? What? Checks and balances is the phrase I'm looking for. Okay. Congress checks the president and balances out the president. The president balances out the Supreme Court. You know, you have these ways to counteract their actions, so you don't have one person that is in charge, okay, and rules over everything else. Well, see, that checks and balances also went down to Congress, because if the people said we want this, and it was not in the interest of the states could say no, we don't want it. Or if the state said in the Senate we want this, and people said this is an absurd idea, we don't want it, we're not going to support it. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're saying, well, come on, Bronchi, that's a crazy idea. When could there ever be an issue that the states would not want what the people want? Well, okay, I'm glad you asked. Thank you for asking that. Very good. And the answer is Obamacare. Okay? Obamacare. Now you're like, okay, come on, you're getting political. No, I'm not. I'm going to use this as an example. Obamacare passed the House and the Senate. Party line vote. Not a single Republican in the Senate or the House of Representatives voted for it. Okay? It passed. It is the law of the land. How many states currently are suing the United States to block implementation of Obamacare? How many? How many states are there in the Union? It's 50. In order for a bill to pass the Senate, it requires a majority vote. Majority vote, treaties are 2/3. Majority vote, which is what? Majority vote of 50 is 26. How many are suing to block it in their state because it will bankrupt them? How many? 38. 38 states are voting, are suing to block something that their senators had done. Had this not been in effect, never would have happened. Why? Because Obamacare is not in the best interest of the states, which ultimately have to pay. 38 are suing to block. Okay. But, as I say, for me, do away with that. For me, what I would like. Okay, so other antitrust regulations. The Sherman Antitrust Act now is about 30 years old. It is old, it is decrepit, it is falling apart. So, it is going to be replaced by the Clayton Antitrust Act of 1914. Clayton Antitrust Act of 1914 is going to define illegal business practices, and thanks to the Federal Trade Commission Act, it's going to be able to enforce them. So you see, they learned. Remember, we passed the Interstate Commerce Commission, said you can't do this, but there's no enforcement mechanism. We pass a bill, then we're going to pass a way to enforce it. So we've learned from our mistakes. So it defines price fixing as illegal. What is price fixing? No, that would be like the next aspect. Price fixing is setting a price so low that your competitors can't compete and force them out of business, and it would create a monopoly for you. Let's say, Radler's convenience store. They own most of the Exxons in town. Let's say all the Radlers, all owned by one family, was to lower the price of gas to $1 a gallon. What would happen? What would happen? They would get all the business, and Lauren, what would happen? No one would go to the other places, and because of that, in the law of business, and what would happen to those other companies? They would go bankrupt, and they would close down, and then what would happen? Rattlers would go to $6 a gallon because they control the market. Okay? They control the market. So that is illegal. Price fixing is illegal if it would result in a monopoly for you. Second is if you own a railroad company and you also own a company that, I don't know, let's say makes widgets. All right? You know widgets, those things that you put on things, right? Widgets. Yes? Widgets. A widget. I'm going to create a widget. I own a widget company. And I own a railroad. Okay? So I'm going to not charge my widget company to use my railroad. Okay? Which means I can get my items to the store a lot cheaper than my competitor in the widget market. Yes?
So which company is the
Railroad
company where the same company does?
Well, it's the same. Yeah. I mean, if it was a railroad company, you would still have to charge them because it's the same owner. If you have two companies, it's defined as if it's a trust. You know, like if I own this railroad company and I own the widget company, but ultimately I owned it, I would still fall under the ownership. Okay. Now I'm sure there's ways around it. I'm sure there are ways around it. Okay.
Like the trucking cattle, the cattle company is not about to pay trucks.
Now here's the thing though. Also that if that cattle, what it comes down to is that cattle company, in this instance you presented, is if they under this guideline or under this rule, if they are providing a service to the public as well, they have to be the same price. Okay? And it's like anything else. Here's the thing.
You're taking money from yourself to pay yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, you charge yourself for something you're doing.
Well, but it makes it competitive still for those people who aren't. Now here's the deal. Okay, now just hold on. All right, let's go a little bit further. One person cannot be on the board of directors for more than one company. So if you had two similar companies, I could not be on the board of Walmart and Target because I'd have information that I could use against each other. Can't do that. Now, it did exempt unions. Unions aren't considered part of a trust. Trustworthy. They're not considered a trust. Pardon my pun. But it does establish the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, through the Federal Trade Commission Act of 1914, which is in charge of enforcing this Clayton Antitrust Act. And what it has the power to do is if Taylor, if your situation came to pass and it was discovered, here's the big thing, if it was discovered, what they would issue are cease and desist letters that say, cease and desist your illegal action. If you do not, you will be taken, okay, for violating this act. Now, this is going to take us, we need to go south for a little bit. Spend some time in Old Mexico, where many of you are going for spring break. Yeah, what? And for those of you that won't be returning,
Say that.
it's always fun. Every semester, somebody gets an email. I'm in a Mexican jail. I can't get.
Whatever.
I told you about the story that I had of a professor who said that I had a student email said that she went to Mexico over Thanksgiving break, lost her passport, and couldn't get back. Tell you that story? No?
No.
Okay, anyway, this is a fun story. So she makes this conversation. Hadn't been back since spring break. I mean, from Thanksgiving. And sounded like a good story, but he said, but you know what? This is right when President Lofton left A&M to go to Missouri, and KBTX was interviewing people at A&M, and they actually interviewed her, and they put up her name on the bottom of the screen, and he saw it. So he said, so he found it online, sent her the link, and said, wow, Mexico looks a lot like Texas A&M.
Oh my God.
Never heard from her again.
Oh, that's serious.
So, okay, this is what's going on in Mexico. In Mexico, you have had since 1870 to 1910, you have had one president, and his name is Porfirio Diaz. (1871 to 1910). And because of his administration, Mexico was very stable. And as a result, during this time period, it was very open to American markets. Because of that, the United States would invest heavily into Mexico. Today, what is the number one export in Mexico? No, let me rephrase this. Number one source. That's no. What is the number one? What is the number one income-producing item in Mexico? Still today, oil. Vast oil reserves. Okay? But they don't have the technology to drill it. Who does? The United States. So what happens? Exxon, Standard Oil, they all go in there and they start spending millions of dollars creating these huge oil refineries. That's going to be important a little later. Because Diaz is there, he's like, cool, bring it on. It's foreign investment. Now, the second one today is still oil. The first one is still oil. The second one, you know what it is? Money sent back from illegal immigrants in the United States sent back to Mexico, which is why Mexico encourages illegal immigrants into the United States. So, Porfirio Diaz is, in 1910, he has gotten old, and as a result, he is going to be overthrown and replaced by Francisco Madero. And he is going to serve 1910 to 13. Can you see that? That black? Would you prefer I use a different color? I want to use red, okay? Which is good because Madero is going to be assassinated, Huerta, by Victoria Huerta in 1914, and he's going to serve until 1916. But he assassinates Madero, and because he assassinates Madero, he becomes the president. That's the passage from Mexican election.
Oh.
Boom! I killed you. I'm president. So, Huerta, because Huerta became president on the assassination of another president, Mexico is going to be filled with turmoil. This is a different subject, but if you look at immigration to the United States from Mexico, it starts in 1910. It really starts in 1910 to present day. Large numbers of Mexican citizens. I'm not being derogatory. I'm talking actually Mexican citizens coming to the United States. It starts in 1910. All this turmoil. So what happens is, like any other time in which there is economic turmoil involving American citizens, we send a naval flotilla to the area, the Gulf of Mexico, along the coast, to protect American interests and, if necessary, get Americans out of Mexico as quick as possible. In Enter the equation the Tampico affair of April 9, 1914. Now, the admiral in charge of the flotilla is Alfred T. Mayo. He has arranged for enough barrels of oil to be placed on a dock to be picked up in Tampa Bay, Tampico, I'm sorry, Tampico, to be resupply the American flotilla in the Gulf of Mexico. We do this all the time. It's just something that you do. Okay, you buy stuff from them. You buy their oil. Now, he dispatches the USS Dolphin to go to Tampico Bay and to pick it up. The Dolphin puts out a whale boat, big boat, that is capable of carrying a lot of cargo, and sends it ashore, flying American flag, crewed by American sailors. When they arrive, they discover that their area that they are in has just experienced a rebellion that has just been put down, and right next to them was a major battle over the Iturbide Bridge. And the federal soldiers are still there expecting another counterattack. Well, for whatever reason, these soldiers are told that there are people stealing barrels from the shore, and they go to stop them. Well, these are Americans. We've got an agreement here. But the problem is, when they arrive, who speaks Spanish? Do I speak Spanish? Okay. Start yelling at me in Spanish.
No hagas eso. No, no lo hagas. No, vete. No lo hagas.
What are you saying? American. American, you speak louder so people who don't speak English will understand you. I don't understand you! So what happens is there's nobody who speaks Spanish on the American side. There's nobody who speaks English on the Mexican side. And the American sailors are arrested. Well, what happens is eventually it's realized this is a mistake, and the sailors are returned on the field. Mayo is furious. He demands of Mexico that they issue a written apology, that they fly the American flag over the fort at Tampico, and they provide the United States flotilla a 21-gun salute, which is the highest honor any military. Now, the Mexican general does provide a written apology, but he refuses to fly the American flag over Mexican soil, and he refuses the 21-gun salute. Mayo is indignant. He writes to Woodrow Wilson. Wilson is furious that these Mexicans are behaving this way towards the States. Are they? And he gets Congress to authorize an invasion of Mexico in Tampico to show those Mexicans who's boss. Overreact much? Eventually, we get out of this situation. We kind of realize we stuck our foot in it. Oh, shoot, how we get out of it? The way we get out of it is we ask the ABC powers, Argentina, Brazil, and Chile, to arbitrate this problem and basically help us get out. Now, we get out, but it really is an embarrassment. Really big embarrassment. Europe, it causes a lot of lack of trust with the causes a lot of lack of trust in Latin America for the United States, and it also makes us look as tin-horn dictators to Europe. We're just kind of trying to boss around all these Latin American countries, but we can't. Germany is very upset with us. Now, Huerta is going to be overthrown by Venustiano Carranza, and he is going to be in office from 1914. Oh, I just got that's supposed to be 13. Sorry, 13 to 1914. And then Carranza is 1914 to 1920. Now, another revolutionary who wished he had been president, and man that wished that he could get the opportunity to kill someone so he could become president, is a man by the name of Francisco Pancho Villa. Pancho Villa is going to try to make a name for himself by invading the United States on March 9th, 1916, and attacking the small city of Columbus, New Mexico, and killing 17 Americans. Now, Wilson is furious at this. Woodrow Wilson, President Wilson, is furious at this, and dispatches General John Blackjack Pershing with the American Expeditionary Force of 10,000 men into Mexico to try to catch Pancho Villa. They never do, but they are going to be there when they are called out to go war in 1917. Now, in 1917, things in Mexico kind of calmed down. A new constitution is ratified that puts down most of the Mexican issues, but causes the United States to get very upset. See, one of the things a nation can do, and that there's really no recourse for it, is that they can nationalize an industry. When they nationalize an industry, they say everything that pertains to this industry is, by definition, owned by our nation. So what they do in the 1917 Constitution is they nationalize the oil industry. And when they nationalize the oil industry, they take, without any form of compensation, all of the American-owned oil drilling, oil rigs, and everything associated with that. But that's not something we're going to deal with right now because there's another issue that is on the horizon. That is the growing power of Germany. Talked a little bit about Germany beforehand. We'll come back to this and kind of set this up for Thursday. After the Franco-Prussian War, Otto von Bismarck, who we've introduced before, was able to create out of those 39 principalities, those German principalities, the German Confederation. Because of how strong they are suddenly stronger than the pre-existing German nation, German state, that of Austria-Hungary. So what they're able to do is force on Austria a treaty of alliance that basically forces Austria to be a vassal state to the German Confederacy. Okay? Like a second-class citizen. Now, something that Bismarck had done that really benefited Germany was he had negotiated and kept intact a neutrality agreement with Russia. This neutrality agreement said, hey, we don't want to fight you. We're not going to fight you. And if we have any issues, we'll settle them peacefully. It'll not go to war. Russia says, cool, we're good with that. We don't want to go to war. In the 1880s, the German industry is going to skyrocket. They're going through their own industrial revolution. They're going to be the world leader in industrial production. They're experiencing twice as much economic growth as England, which had been the world leader. No one is anywhere close to what they are capable of. Then in 1898, they embarked on a naval building campaign. And their goal with this naval building campaign is to modernize their navy and to build, for every 3 ships that England has, 2 ships for themselves. Okay? So if England has 3 ships, naval ships, they're going to build 2. Now England is by far the world's largest navy. So all of a sudden, somebody is showing themselves to be interested in competing with them. And this is going to cause them concerns. Why? What's the phrase? To be the best, you've got to beat the best. And that's what they're concerned with. Then, Kaiser William I dies, and his son, William II, takes over. He has completely different views than his father, and he dismisses Bismarck. To make matters worse, he also allows the Russian neutrality agreement to expire. As a result, there's nothing preventing Germany and Russia from fighting if things occur that might, I don't know, result in them fighting. Right, that's where we're going to end for the day. And we will pick up there. Remember, you have an assignment due tonight.
So is the gym Tuesday?